Hello and welcome to the Breeders' Cup Mile Monster Podcast, presented by Spendthrift Farm, home of six-time reigning champion sire Into Mischief. Very excited to introduce this next guest. It's been a bit of a tradition these last few years to have him on here to talk about the Breeders' Cup Mile. You're going to see him in the coverage of the Breeders' Cup. He's Rishi Persad. Rishi, how are things?
Pete, it's great to be back. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm excited. Obviously, we're getting ever closer to the great meeting, so I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get out there and just being able to chat to you about one of my favorite races historically at the Breeders' Cup because of the European success and so many great horses that have done it and won it, and some of them done the double, treble. It's a terrific event, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Let's start off with the horse who is the current betting favorite. Notable Speech was third in this race last year. Can he go a couple places better this time around?
I think, Pete, that he will go two places better. I don't think it's a secret that probably his entire season has been geared around succeeding in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I thought he ran a good race in the Breeders' Cup Mile 12 months ago. I don't think it was Notable Speech at his best. In fairness to the horse, he'd had a very busy time of things. Don't forget, last year, in the lead up to the Breeders' Cup, he'd been on the go in the early part of the year as he built up to the first classic of the season in the beginning of May, in the springtime. His season's been very different this year. His first appearance this year came in the Locking Stakes in the middle of May, and I think there are fairly good excuses for all his runs, all his defeats, up until, of course, his most recent run, where at least he was a short price favourite to win in Canada. And he did so pretty impressively. He should have won. And I think he's had the experience of travelling. I think everything that he's done this season has suggested that he's going to be a better horse than he was 12 months ago, going into Del Mar, going into the Breeders' Cup Mile, a race that Charlie Appleby has an outstanding record in, as we know. And we know how good Charlie Appleby's record at the Breeders' Cup is in any regard. And I think he would probably be the best of the Godolphin contenders and the best of the Charlie Appleby team.
What of the other European contenders? Is there one that stands out as the main danger in the market? There's a lot of horses at kind of similar prices.
Well, Sarlan is trained by someone who I think it's fair to say this season has truly established himself now amongst the very best in the world in Francis-Henri Greffard. His performances with all his horses, obviously, particularly with Calandagan and Darres, have proven what a fantastic trainer he is. And he's been able to travel horses all over the world and prove how good he is already. And I think Sarlan is just getting better and better. Interestingly enough, earlier in the year, with regards to Sarlan, connections were thinking this is a horse who was going to be a really good 4-year-old. But his season has really clicked in his last couple of starts. And his most recent start at Group 1 level, he beat one of my favourite horses, Rosalien, because Rosalien's best form ties in with Notable Speech. My only query about Sarlan in relation to Notable Speech is the fact that Rosalien was unlucky. And I think with a cleaner run, Rosalien would have beaten Sarlan last time out in Longchamp. And therefore, that makes me think that Rosalien's, through a line through Rosalien, that means that Notable Speech, I think, should be good enough, because I don't think there's much between the very best Notable Speech and the very best Rosalien. Obviously, Notable Speech beat Rosalien in the Guineas last year, and Notable Speech finished behind Rosalien at Royal Ascot in the St James's Palace Stakes. So there's not much between them. They were very close to each other in the Locking Stakes back in May. So I personally think that Notable Speech has got the beating of Salat. The horse that I'm totally baffled by is the Lion in Winter. If I could be confident that the Lion in Winter is going to turn up and produce his very best form at Del Mar, then yes, I would say he is the principal danger for Notable Speech. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all about what sort of horse we're going to get. There have been times when he's run really well this season. He ran really well at Ascot on Champions Day. He ran really well in France on one occasion. But there have been too many disappointing runs in between. He started off the year, and bear this in mind, he started off 2025 as the leading contender for the 2000 Guineas, the Derby, the Arc, every single big race you could think of, he was favourite for. But his season has not delivered what everyone expected of him. He was an outstanding 2-year-old, had some really good form. I just don't know what you're going to get. And it'll be interesting to see how he trains in the lead up to the race and how he takes to the surroundings at Del Mar. Because the one thing that worries me more about him than anything else in the lead up to any race is his temperament. He gets really hot and bothered. He was really hot and bothered at Ascot, but he ran okay. He might have been favoured where he raced in his part of the track. But I just don't know what I'm going to get from him. And I actually think if I had to choose a horse outside Notable Speech, I'd go with Jonquil. I just feel he is the type of horse who could run really well at a big price. He's quite an honest horse. He tends to run his race. He ran really well in the French Guineas earlier in the season. He's put in a couple of, but one or two efforts that haven't been quite at his best. But I think generally he's a horse that you can rely on. I think on his one foray in North America, I think he showed that he's a very smart horse and he's shown the ability to travel. So he would be the pick outside of Notable Speech for me, just because I feel that he has got a little bit of value in his price. I think some of the odds I've seen quoted for him in double figures, and I thought he might be outside of Notable Speech when you compare him with Sarlan and the Line in Winter, all the 3-year-olds. I thought he would be the one that might run the place.
History remembers moments of extraordinary strength, skill, and determination. True greatness is forged by those who fulfill their destiny.
Jonquil is a great way to introduce the next topic that I had on my card here, which is the American contingent, because he's got form that ties in so closely with rhetorical. And this is one where, depending on how you watch races, you can make an argument either way. You could say Jonquil was best. He went so far, he got too far back, he came flying, different kind of ride, he wins. Or you can say rhetorical was close to that fast pace. All the other pace horses finished out the back. On dynamics, I want to upgrade him. If you like Jonquil, I think you have to like rhetorical or give him a squeak at least a little bit, yes?
I would agree with that. I would agree. I think everyone looked at that race and they thought, well, Jonquil was too far back. Dylan Davis obviously didn't know the horse that well, and there were excuses for Jonquil. I think on a different day with, say, Colin Keane in the saddle, someone who knows him pretty well, he may well have won the race. But the other point you make on the flip side is exactly correct. Rhetorical, he was prominent throughout the race. And when he picked it up, he had to hold on, having been part of that pace early on. So I thought he did well because program trading, he was in midfield and he made up ground from the back. I think it's fair to say Rhetorical did well to win. And I don't think you could just look at the race in its entirety. When you consider pace and how races are run, that's also a big part of it. And I think Rhetorical has to be included. But I just feel that Jonquil, with that experience under his belt as well, for the horse as much as anything else, and with a familiar jockey in the saddle, no blame for Dylan Davis. It's the first time he rode him. I would say that I would expect Jonquil to overturn that form from Keeneland.
You make a compelling case. When we're talking about U.S. runners, we have to talk about Johannes, who finished ahead of Notable Speech in this race last year. He loves the course. Do you give him a chance?
I would do. I feel like I truly believe Notable Speech was a little bit flat by my expectations. So whilst I accept that Johannes obviously second in the race last year, and he's also he had a win at a very short price last time out, I can understand why he is an obvious player in the race. But I do believe that the Notable Speech that turned up in the race 12 months ago is not the sharp version of the Notable Speech that's going to turn up for the race this time. I do think that last year Notable Speech ran a little bit flat by what he's truly capable of. But Johannes obviously comes back into the race again, similar to Notable Speech. Clearly, this was the plan. The main target this year is the Breeders' Cup Mile here at Del Mar. And like Notable Speech, he should be cherry ripe for this race. I imagine if the two of them are at their absolute best, not the two horses that raced in the race last year, maybe Johannes, the horse that raced in the race last year, but Notable Speech, the horse who I think will turn up for the race this year, I think there will be a significant gap between Notable Speech and Johannes as opposed to what transpired 12 months ago.
We've covered the principles in the market as of now. Is there anything else that you feel like we should mention to the people at this early stage? Maybe something at a wild price you think could get involved?
Well, I mean, I said I think Colin Keane could probably ride Jonquil. There is the option for Colin Keane to ride Kirat, who, of course, many people in Europe will know caused one of the biggest shocks of the season when he beat Rosalian, Field of Gold, etc., in the Sussex Stakes, when his job in the race was primarily to set really good fractions for Field of Gold, who had won the St James's Palace Stakes and the Irish Guineas, to just blow everything away and prove that he was the outstanding Group 1 miler in Europe. But Richard Kingscote actually gave Kirat a beautiful ride. There were excuses for one or two horses in behind. And he went from being actually a horse that in domestic racing in Britain was a very good handicapper, turned into a decent pattern performer, not a Group 1 horse. Suddenly, he's ended up winning the Sussex Stakes, one of the best, historically, one of the best Group 1 races in Europe, over a mile. And he caught a few people by surprise. But what he has shown is that he can set decent fractions on a turning track. And obviously, he'll be on a turning track. And if he gets out in front, and whoever ends up riding, it may well be Colin Keane. I'm not sure who Colin will choose to ride, whether it'll be Kirat or Jonquil. Then he could be very dangerous on the lead. His trainer, Rafe Beckett, has had Breeders' Cup winner before. And I think he's a horse that you cannot completely rule out. But if it's a fair run race, everyone has a clean race as well, I think Notable Speech is the best horse in the race in terms of raw ability. I don't think you can rule all these horses out because, as you well know, as many people listening to this will know, luck plays an important part. And sometimes when you're out in front and it's a lot of mess going on in behind, especially as we know at Del Mar where it's tight and the short straight, etc., it makes it hard for horses to come from behind. And Kirat, I've seen around 16-1 quoted for Kirat. Well, he could be a horse that might get out in front if he gets into a battle with Rhetorical and they go too fast, but that might play into the hands of a fast-finishing Notable Speech or indeed a Johannes. But I think in terms of pure class and raw ability, Notable Speech is the standout horse in the race.
Where can we find you next week, my friend?
You will find me on the breakfast show for FanDuel every morning from Monday through till Saturday, actually. I'm doing Friday and Saturday as well with the team. Also be working on Monday afternoon covering the draw, the post positions as you call it. So yeah, and obviously on Friday and Saturday covering certainly all the turf races where we hope to have a few winners for Europe.
I look forward to seeing you in those places and in person. Really appreciate the time today.
Always a pleasure to chat to you, Pete. I cannot wait to see you on the track at Del Mar.